Welcome to Resilience and Resolve with Lance Drury.
Welcome back to Resilience and Resolve with attorney Lance Drury. In a high-stakes practice area like tax resolutions, emotions run high, stress runs deep, and some clients arrive overwhelmed or frustrated before the first meeting even begins. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're talking about how attorneys can work with difficult clients while keeping the case and the relationship steady. Lance, welcome back, sir.
How you doing again, Evan? It's always great to see you.
I'm well. Lance, what usually makes a client feel like difficult in the first place, especially in a practice like yours where people are already under that pressure?
Well, I think part of it is the pressure that the IRS is bringing to bear upon them. You know, some of them are disputing the amount most of the time. What happens is there was a 1099 that wasn't given to the taxpayer, but it's reported to the IRS. And even if you don't get the 1099, you still have an obligation to report that as income. So that does it. But I think the other thing is that people's expectations are really high. I try to temper that. You know, they think they pay me the big bucks. I'm going to wave a magic wand and it's
Yep.
all going to go away. And I tell them that it doesn't happen. I work every Saturday and Sunday morning. I was in here at 6:30 this morning. It's a lot of work for us. It's a lot of work for them. Some of them are not willing to do the work. Some of them are not willing to disclose their financial assets. And I tell them, I make it very clear 85 to 90% of our clients pay less than the full amount, but it's all based on your ability to pay it back. And then there's people that make $250,000 a year and they still expect to get a deal from Uncle Sam. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way, and so I think a lot of it is you've got to temper those unrealistic expectations. And I do that in the initial consult, but I guess some people they think, well, I'm hiring him and it's just going to magically go away.
But when someone is upset or anxious, communication probably can get tense. What helps keep that conversation grounded from the start?
Well, I think you have to be willing to spend the time with the client. I mean,
Mhm.
we try to reach out to the clients on a monthly basis, just to make, even if there's nothing going on with the case, just to let them know that we're still working on the case. Because the biggest complaint that bar associations get is that my client is not communicating with me. So we want to make sure that we're talking to the clients and that we're doing that on a regular basis. Now, there are times when we get people, they're so distraught, they're so upset that they think they can call you every day and they can talk to you for an hour or longer, or they can write you a short novel and they don't pay you any money. One of the things, Evan, I found out is, and all my attorneys agree with me, the people that pay me $50,000 or more to handle a case are the easiest ones to deal with. The ones that pay me $3,500 or $5,000, they're expecting us to do a $20,000, $30,000 case. So I've always found out that the people who pay you the least expect the most. And so one of the things that we're going to try to do down the road, because a lot of those cases we lose money on because there's other issues that come up. We don't always charge from that. We are charging the way that we charge these people so we don't lose money on those cases. That maybe we're going to get out of the cases under $20,000 because you can't charge that much, or it's not worth the client's while to hire us. But then it's not worth our while either because we end up spending all this time on the case. So that's one of the problems that's involved when you get these lower paying cases.
But how do your expectations can shape that client's behavior though? What's the value of setting those boundaries early in the relationship so it doesn't happen?
Well, that's why we do that in the initial consult before they
Right.
even hire us. We want to let them know there's nothing magical about this process. It's a lot of work for us. It's a lot of work for them because, Evan, here's what happens. They hire me. They pay me the big bucks. I tell them in the initial consult, don't pay me if you're not going to do what we ask you to do because you're wasting your money. And I don't want to take your money if you're just going to waste it. So I tell them all that. I tell them, you've got to get us the tax returns. If we don't have the last 6 years' tax returns prepared and filed, we can't get you a settlement. The IRS is going to require that as a condition to any negotiations over a settlement. And guess what? We'll send them a letter every month. It's 6 months later. It's 12 months later. They still don't have the returns prepared. Or if they hired us to do the returns, they haven't returned the tax organizers. Same thing with financial statements. If they've got the returns prepared, then we can send them a financial statement, because we got to go through all that. That takes 5 to 10 hours or longer. Go through all that, bank statements and all that. And we'll tell them, we got to have this. We send it to them. It's a month later. It's 6 months later. We've sent it to them every month. They're not responding. It can go on for a year. And then once they do send us the 433F, which is the IRS's financial statement, at least for individuals in collections, then we need supporting documentation, because some of their expenses are going to exceed the national standards. And then we have to have proof. I just can't call up the IRS and say, Joe's a great guy. Let's give Joe a deal. I wish it was that easy. I'd be in my villa in the Caribbean, Evan, if we could do that. But we can't do that. We got to prove to the IRS, and then they don't give us the documentation. And that goes on for months. So that's why it takes about a year to get a client a resolution. And most of the time, they're not waiting on us. We're either waiting on the client to get us the documentation, or we submit the stuff and then we wait for the IRS, because they're not properly staffed and it takes forever and they're making all kinds of mistakes. And we're spending more time to get our clients a resolution than we ever had before.
Every attorney handles tough personalities differently, though, Lance. What about your mindset when it comes to keeping somebody staying calm when a client is not calm?
Well, here's the thing. When they send us an email and they're not calm and, this is a scam, or, why should I have to do this, or whatever their excuse is, or whatever reason they're upset. In the old days, I would generally call them right away.
Yeah.
Which just made things worse. It would escalate, sort of, because they were still upset. So now I generally wait a few days before I call them back, and I find out that the majority of the time, not all the time, but a majority of the time, they're better. They've calmed down. They're thinking straighter. They understand more. So I think just letting them vent for a while and listening to them vent and then not responding if they send it by email, that sometimes quenches the situation and takes care of things for the short term.
See, but you work with people facing some of the most stressful financial moments of their lives. Do you have a story about, a difficult client situation that turned around, and what made the difference?
Well, I probably have several of them, but, I don't know in particular one, but I do know that there's been several where it looked like, based upon their income, that, they were going to be a full pay. And they were upset about it. But then we found out, okay, I'm going to retire in a year, or my spouse is going to retire in a year, or I've lost my job and now I'm not going to make enough money. And so sometimes just delaying that resolution, you can get them a much better deal. And so sometimes we just try to delay getting them a deal until their income is less. Or if they're moving or whatever, their expenses are going to change. If they downsize because they've got other bills or whatever, or if they have credit card debt and they need to pay that off, which means they're going to have less money in the bank. So sometimes we delay the process until their financial situation changes. Now, that doesn't happen all the time, because I have people in their 40s and 50s. They're not anywhere near retirement. They're not changing anything. But that's one of the things that we can do to prevent that situation. The other thing is if people come to me and they want to sell their house and there's no lien, we tell them to sell the house before we get an agreement, because once we get an agreement, a lien's going to be filed. And Evan, guess what? Once that lien is filed, the IRS their debt has to be satisfied at the time of the sale of the home. So just telling them to sell the home before we get the resolution can save them tens of thousands of dollars, because that lien would have to be satisfied at the time of sale if we set up the agreement first.
Yeah, but that documentation can protect both the attorney and the client. What information or steps should always be put in writing during these tense times?
Everything should be, all your expenses should be in writing. And sometimes we get people, well, I pay for my gas in cash. Well, then we tell them, okay, we're going to wait 3 months until you've built up enough expenses to show the IRS. You put it on your debit card or your check. Well, I don't have a checking account. I don't have a credit card. Okay, well, then you have to build up cash receipts for an extended period of time, because we have to have documentation. It doesn't matter what your expenses are. If you don't have the documentation to show the IRS, you're not going to be able to take that as an allowable expense, and you're going to have to pay more of the debt back.
So, Lance, for an attorney dealing with a challenging client right now, what's one practical step they can take to regain control of the case?
Well, I think you just have to outline everything that's gone on and all the work you've done and show them what you do, and tell them, not everything. And I tell them in the initial consult, not everything is an allowable expense. If you owe monies to Uncle Sam, you can't eat out all the time. You can't exceed the national standards for food. If you get a statement from your doctor saying that you have a special dietary condition, then you can exceed it. You can't give it away. You can't drink it away. You can't gamble it away. You can't take care of your adult kids. You can't make charitable contributions. But other than that, most things are allowable expenses. I had a guy once, and first of all, he hired me. He was upset because we couldn't stop the levy. He was a federal employee. Well, by the time he came to me, the check had already been issued. So we got it stopped for the next month, but not that particular month, and he was upset.
Wow.
And he was the one who had waited too long to hire us. And then the other thing was, when we set him up, he was a full pay. He didn't owe that much money, but he couldn't believe that the IRS was not going to leave money for magazine subscriptions, to eat out, to go on vacation, to make religious contributions, to make charitable contributions. He just couldn't understand why the IRS wouldn't allow that when he owed them all this money. So that's the problem. I had a grandmother once. She was taking care, and we eventually got her into an agreement that she could cover, but she was driving a brand new luxury car, couldn't understand why the IRS would get upset about that. And she was taking care of her grandkids, which I admit is noble. I give her high marks for that. But the IRS is not going to give her credit for those expenses unless she had a guardianship over those children. And she didn't have a guardianship. She didn't have a legal obligation to pay it. So guess what? Those expenses were not allowable in the eyes of the IRS.
Wow. Lance, appreciate the time, sir.
Good to see you, Evan.
Good to see you too. Thank you for joining us on Resilience and Resolve with Lance Drury. Difficult clients aren't a sign of a failing practice. They're a part of serving people who are under real pressure. With the right approach, those cases can stay steady and productive. To learn more about Lance's work or get help with the IRS issue, visit lancedrurylaw.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the show, and leave a review if you found this episode helpful. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.